Welcome back. We are going to continue working on our mama duck. Today we'll see how far we get, but my plan is to make its little legs. Then we need to make it a tail, and then we will sew all of it together so that we can see how well we're doing. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a good day. So the first thing that I think we should do is cut out all of our pieces again and sew it and see where we like. If we like the beak, see if we're happy with the head before we get any farther with that. We haven't actually sewn a prototype of the head yet that is attached to the whole body, and the beak needs to be sewn onto the head to see how well we're doing with that. So I think I'll start with that. I'll get that all sewn up, and then I will show you guys where we're at with that, and we will move from there. Okay, here we're at. This is where we're at. I think she's turning out super cute. I kind of love her. A few things. One, can you see our tail? That worked out better. We fixed the tail. Now we can design the shape of whatever feathers we want to come out of there, which I think will be cute. This beak, okay, if you can see the beak, if you remember, I added all of that fabric to the top. The effect that it created was that there's too much fabric now on the top, and instead of staying up where we thought it would be, it made it push it down. Do I like it like that? Should we change it? Let me show you on the pattern. This is where we're at. The pattern, I added that little top piece, which I should have thought of that. A lot of this is, oh, why didn't I think of that when I did it, what that would actually do? But I don't know, maybe others are better at it than I am, but sometimes I just have to sew it and see. So if we remove this, her beak would go back up, I think. What I'm gonna try is both ways. I'm gonna keep this pattern because I think I kind of like it, and then try it the other way, and then if I like that way better, then we'll keep it. If not, I'll have this pattern too, and we can go back. The thing about sewing this is I need to look at this hole size and see if it actually lines up with the length of this line and this line. Because what I was finding as I was sewing this is that this hole was not quite big enough. So I need to work on that. I need to measure those things and adjust the beak just a little bit. So that's where we're at with the beak. So what's next? I think let's work on another prototype for the beak, like I had described. But then let's also get started on where we want to place these little feet. Let's see if we can place the legs about right here. Let's figure out, based on my silhouette, what the diameter of those legs truly would be, and if we think that it's truly feasible to sew those on. If not, we might want to reconsider and make them bigger just because it will be easier to sew. Currently, my diameter is 1/2 inch. So let's ask Siri what our circumference is. Siri's not doing it. Okay, thank you, Siri. We're gonna have to do this the long way. Circle, calculator. The circumference of our circle with a diameter of 1/2 inch is 1.5 inches. This is how little our legs would be. I think it's funny. I think it would be funny for her to have super skinny legs. So I want to try it. My idea is to open up the side of this, open it up the gusset, and so that we can access the circle without having to sew a tiny little circle. We'll access it from the side so that we can make it easier on ourselves You know I don't like to sew circles, so let's try that. Let's get a new freezer paper. We'll draw our gusset again. So based on the shape of our plush, we're talking that the circle is right here. We know that our circle diameter is a 1/2 inch. So let's see where we're at. Let's go 3/4 of an inch in, and then that means the circle is like this. I actually think, based on my silhouette, these circles should probably be farther in. Look, we might want to go another 1/4 of an inch in. X those ones out. No going rogue. We can't make stuff up here. We got to be basing it off of what we have drawn, so it actually ends up being what we draw. Now, length. Currently, the length of these, 2 inches, we'll say. There's 2 inches. It's a shorty little leg. What did I say my circumference is? 1.6. So what I'm thinking the easiest way to do this is to sew 2 half circles. 1.5 inches is 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so here's our leg. Now let's draw our foot. We again need a 1/2 inch circle. This is really tight sewing. We might need to change this just because the sewing is too hard. This is our silhouette. Let's not forget that. So to create some thickness to our silhouette for the actual sewing pattern, we need to decide how thick we want our foot to be. And I'm thinking that probably we want to keep it pretty thin. So giving it a 1/4 of an inch around the whole edge, I think is a good amount. So we know that our rule of sewing is when you have something that is going to be sewn as an oval and not a circle, to know how much to add to the silhouette to get your actual pattern and in 3D based on your thickness, you have to go times 2 your regular width, your silhouette width, plus 1 time the added width. So if we want to add a 1/4 of an inch to the added thickness of our pattern, then what we need to do is let's add 1/4. We have to divide it up 4 times on each edge, because if we're doubling this and we're adding our 1/4, then we need to add it on this outside edge. We only have to add 1/8 around the whole thing to get a total of 1/4 added thickness. Okay, so there's our added thickness for our silhouette. I think one thing I want to do though is lengthen the center toe just a tiny bit. See how much longer these toes actually are than this center toe. So let's make that one a little bit bigger. Let's redraw this. There we go. Lengthen that toe just a tiny bit. But I do want to point out, if you notice, we did add 1/4 of an inch, which was needed, so our foot didn't end up too small, because if you'll notice, it is the same size. Okay, we're gonna have a circle in the middle, but I don't want to sew a tiny circle. Let's cut this. We're gonna widen it and put our circle in there so that we can sew it. Here's our 3 pieces. Now, we need to consider how we're gonna attach these. If we cut this piece in half and have 2 leg pieces that are attached, one on top, one on bottom, that then we sew each of them separately and then put it together, we need to decide where the foot is going to have its opening so that we can sew it on, because ideally you would only want to have one opening. What I think we can do is, if we attach the 2 leg pieces on this side, then you could sew up on one side, then leave this open, and then have one opening on the side of the foot. Let's get another foot. This will be the bottom foot. We need a top foot, which will not be this anymore unless we mess it up. In our foot, we need a 1/2 inch circle. Whoa, that was not in the center. Okay, so a 1/2 inch circle right there. What I'm gonna do is slice this open on the side. And then if we open it, this is our new pattern piece. Opening that will give us a line to sew in and then close it. Okay, I'm gonna go iron. I'll be right back. I really don't want a seam here in the middle if I don't have to. So if I fold it in half and I cut it, we can open it like this, which ultimately will give us more width in the belly than what we originally had. I think that's okay. I don't think that will change much. Just make her a little more plump. So if we do this, then it will add a little bit of fabric in there. Okay, that's what I'm thinking. So let's try that. Then we can make this into one piece that sews all the way around. One of the things that is unknown that we need to figure out is the fact that when we cut out the gusset and add length, we didn't actually change this length, which is the important length because that's what sews to the outside of the belly. But I did it 2 different ways where I made it a little bit longer. This one made it wider. So this one has more fabric that we actually added going this way versus this one added just more fabric going this way. And it still added a little bit in the width, but more in the length. So both of them will work. It really is just dependent on what we want it to end up looking like. And I just wasn't quite sure. So I felt like I would think about it and I would try multiple ways. So I'm going to cut these out. Then we're going to think about how we want to sew them and maybe try a bird with each different style. Okay, one thing that does matter when these patterns is that this stays flat. See that tiny gap? We want it to be flat. The length is still 1 inch, but we do need to straighten that out so it's flat again. We don't want it to be a triangle. Also, I cut this tiny circle out from the gusset piece, but it's the right size that we need. So I'm going to use it for the length that we need. So that is the circle that we need. So I'm going to draw that on just like that. So there are our correct shapes. So when we pull that back, see how it turns into the circle that we want? Let's adjust this to go straight and see what happens. So we'll measure our length about 3/4 of an inch on the outside and 2 5/8 on the outside. Okay, so if we go 3/4, it was not 2 5/8. It was 1 5/8. That makes way more sense. We started on the 1 inch mark, so 2 5/8 is only 1 5/8 inch. Okay. Okay, that's exactly 1 5/8. So connect those. Just make sure our length is the same. 3/8, 3/8. Okay, so there's also this. So I want to show you the difference of what will happen with a straight foot versus a curved foot. This is a straight foot. What happens is you get more of a curve in the actual foot. So see how this goes down versus this foot, how little of that happens because the curve is naturally there. This one versus this one. Same amount of fabric, same lengths, just a different shape. So I think we should do one of each foot and we'll see the difference. Okay, so we have just spent a lot of time working on this foot. We have 2 shapes that we're going to try and see. I am leaning towards this shape just because that's going to be easier to sew than this shape. We're still talking that this is probably a pretty little circle, and if it's miserable to sew, I will probably just make the whole thing bigger and scrap the skinny legs. But I still think it'll be cute. So if we can manage it, then I want to keep it. One thing that we can think about too is if we scale the whole thing, these circles are going to get bigger and it'll be easier to sew as well. We also made the holes in the legs. I like that if we do it this way, then instead of the original idea of cutting it across, we don't have that seam there. The compromise is that we had to add fabric in the center here to be able to add these feet in there. So we did change the shape of the gusset a little bit. I think that in the long run, it'll be okay. I did try 2 different shapes. This one ended up being way wider in the middle. This one ended up giving it a little bit more lengthwise versus wide. So we're to the point where we need to start sewing. Before we start sewing, so no, we're not. I want to do something else. Let's add our wings to this. We can add all of these things at the same time without really affecting each other. And so let's add our wings and draw those shapes. Those should be fairly easy, especially if we just add a dart to the body to sew those in. So let's do that. We'll add a dart to the body. We'll draw the shape of our wings, and then we'll do one more draft. Okay, for the shape of our wings, I just want 2 pieces of fabric sandwiched together. I'm not going to stuff it. I just think that it'll be cute to have these little thin tired wings for a mom duck. So I don't think we need to add any width to this. I'm just going to trace our exact silhouette, and I think that is our pattern. We might have to play with this top line right here. It might need to be a different angle so we get this sitting the way that we want it to sit. I think one of the easiest ways to figure that out will be to just cut one of our old prototypes. We're going to draw the wings. We're going to cut the fabric out and make sure that it is at the right angle that we want it. So then we'll know where we need to add a dart right on this pattern rather than guessing, because like I said, putting a straight line on a curved item doesn't always work. So she's sitting right here like this, straighten her out, and the wing is right from here to here. Let's cut out our pattern piece and put it on there. I've cut this out. We're gonna line her up along the silhouette, and this little wing drapes past like this, right here, like this. Okay, so there we go. Look, it is a pretty straight line, but it goes at an angle. Let's put it up against our pattern piece. There it is. Let's make another one of these. We're due for a new one. Here's that. We need to mark that. We also need to mark right here. Then we're going to cut this all the way across. We're going to add enough that we can have seam allowance and it's long enough to sew this in at the right spot. Let's make sure. Right there. Okay, so we have our dart, our wing. We're going to add this dart just wide enough that we can add it and then sew just a little bit past it right here. But I'm going to go iron this onto another piece of freezer paper and then we'll draw that dart. Okay, our pattern has really evolved from this silhouette shape to now this is our pattern. To create this silhouette from a 2D picture to a 3D animal. Isn't that an amazing process? I just think it is so cool. Okay, so that's where we're gonna very simply sew this Tired Mama's wings in. And we'll make sure that the length is right. If it's not quite long enough, we can very easily add some length into the center of that wing. So where are we at? We're gonna add our legs to this draft. I should draw a tail. We can add that too. We can add our wings, our neck, and we need to fix our beak, but I don't think that we fixed that on our pattern shape yet. So here's our pattern. I think I'm gonna still keep a curve, but go much more shallow. Let's try that this time, which also will take some length away from that hole. The hole in the mouth, in the face was not big enough, so that will take some length away from that. Okay, this is what I'm thinking. Let's try it. Got my beak, my pattern face. We're gonna try this foot and this foot, one on each leg. I think I'm gonna try this pattern for that this time. We'll save that one for next time. Here's our neck. Here's my leg. If we have a full circle that we're going around, I can just double this and then we don't have to have 2 seams. Okay, let me make a face of this. One thing I would like to say is if there is a part that I'm not showing well or that you guys are not understanding and would like to see more of, I am new to this filming myself and teaching you guys the information that I know, and it's been trickier than I thought it would be. So if there is something that you would like to see or have questions about, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. I will definitely read it. I'll take what you say and see what I can do to do better or to help you understand better. But I'm trying my best here. This is a new skill for me. I wouldn't even call it a skill yet. So let's go on. I'll sew this. We'll come back when I got it all sewed and stuffed, and we'll evaluate our shape. These all cut out. And now I realized I forgot to design a little tail. And I don't want to sew another draft without a little tail. So I'm going to hurry and do that. The only thing that really matters about our little tail is that the opening is slightly less than 1 inch, because that is the hole that we have at the back of the body is 1 inch. What does a duck tail look like? I don't know. Maybe I should look. Okay, so a duck tail is actually quite boring. It just comes to a point. Although I did learn that male ducks have a tiny little curlicue right at the tip of their tail, and that's how you know they're a male. Who knew? Okay, if we're doing something more traditional, we could do something like this. I'm thinking, since this is just a frazzled mother, that we just have a cute little pointy tail at the back that looks like maybe her feathers are not quite as preened as she would like them to be. I'm just going to make it 2 pieces of fabric together, just like we did with the wings. So we don't really need to add any width to it or anything. I think this will look nice just like that. So I'm going to try this time. If we don't like it, we can reshape it for the next draft.